So I came across this video the other day called the best flashcard to immersion ratio for fluency from a channel called Jeremiah's Language Ideas. I've already watched it through and I found a few points that I just kind of wanted to talk about. And so I thought we'd just take a little dive together.
What is the optimal input to flashcard ratio? I feel like this is such an important question for anybody at any stage learning a language, and yet I don't think I've directly talked about it that much on this channel. So here we go. I think this is super important for you. So in my opinion, I think I have a little bit of a hot take here. It, of course, depends on your goals, just like everything with language learning, right? It depends heavily on your goals. But I'd say for most people, you're probably better off with the majority of your time with the language being spent with flashcards. I know, it sounds crazy, right? But
Okay, yeah, so it does sound crazy, and also I'm interested to hear where he's going. I don't think it depends on your goals. I think it depends on your level. I will just say, like, at the beginner stage, like, you're doing these core decks, you're repping out stuff, getting a base vocabulary so you can prime yourself for immersion. And in the intermediate level, you're still mining a ton of cards, so you're probably still going to be spending a bit more time in SRS trying to get your backlog down rather than immersing. And then at the advanced stage, you're not going to be finding as many unknown words in the wild, so you'll probably be spending more time immersing, trying to find more unknown words to then put into your flashcard SRS system, right? So I think it depends on your level, not your goals necessarily, but let's see where he's going with this.
But hear me out, okay? So if you're making flashcards in the right way, which is you're making them I+1, which means that in every flashcard, there's only one element in that card that you don't understand. That turns that flashcard into comprehensible input, right? If there's like 5 words on the card that you don't understand, then you're just wasting your own time. It's just too difficult. And at that point, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. You're not getting that much out of it. You're not getting as much of it as you think you are. It's
Okay, so I do agree that, like, there is a limit to how much, like, unknown content you should have on a flashcard for sure. I do think when you make this argument that your card becomes comprehensible input just because it's I+1, like, yes, technically that's true to an extent. It matches your level of the language. However, to just rep out the same comprehensible cards over and over again with the same context for those words, rather than getting repeated exposure to those same words in immersion, where you're going to be seeing them in a ton of different contexts, that's just not worth the squeeze, as you were saying. Like, I just feel like, yeah, like, let's take a word, for example, like daku or idaku, right? To harbor feelings, to hold feelings or something, right? If I were to rep these same, like, 2 cards out for those, like, I would get a general idea of how to use them, but I might also overgeneralize and misuse idaku versus daku, right? Because one refers to harboring feelings and one means to actually physically embrace or hold something. But if I only have, like, a flashcard for one of those use cases and I'm like, oh, I have a card for that word already, I'm good, and then I don't really immerse as much, like, I'm gonna sound weird to Japanese people. And that's just, like, one small example. I do think that to build a good language model, you want to have exposure to the language in a natural format as much as possible. Let's continue, though.
almost like paradoxical, because if you're inexperienced with language learning, you might think that the more unknown things you have on your flashcards, the more you're going to learn, but it's not the case. It doesn't turn out like that. Trust me, I've tried, I've been there. The best thing to do is have only one unknown element, maybe 2 is really pushing it if it, like, for certain sentences.
Okay, I mean, yeah, genuinely good take on, like, comprehensible input. I think that, yeah, that's a good point. You definitely want to have, like, a good balance of knowns. So, I mean, yeah, nothing to really disagree with there.
Talked about that on the channel before, but one unknown element on each card is the best. So that makes the card comprehensible, right?
That's fair.
And you also want to make sure it's a whole sentence on the card, not words, because learning words out of context is really, really difficult to translate into real fluency, right? It just makes it so much harder, because very rarely in the real world, unless it's like a word like yes, no, maybe, something like that, like almost every time you hear a word, it's going to be in the context of a sentence.
So I do agree for the most part when it comes to context here. I mean, yes, with comprehensible input in general, like, the more words you know on your flashcard, the easier it's going to be for your brain to establish those connections and understand how everything fits together. The same also just goes for immersion in general, though. If you make a flashcard for a word and you're like, cool, this is all the context I need, and then rep that card 15 times, you're not going to get nearly as much of a benefit as if you see that word 15 times in your immersion through random shows, through manga, through reading, through anime. Because if you do that, then you get to see the word used in sentences with all sorts of different grammar patterns and words, and you get all these additional benefits of these proxy words that are showing up. If you have a sentence full of words you already know, using new sentence structures, patterns, and grammar, you're getting all these additional benefits on the side rather than just repping the same card 15 times. That's just my take. Yes, your brain might have to work a little bit harder in immersion and it may take longer, but you're building a mental model that pretty much the same way Japanese people did. By doing massive amounts of immersion in the actual content in the native language, you are experiencing raw Japanese and the same words. You're seeing them over and over again in different contexts and getting a better idea of how well they're used. It's a very deep understanding of each word versus this very surface level understanding of how a word is used just from repping out an Anki card over and over again. But I digress.
And so by learning words in the context of a sentence, you're able to more easily grasp their meaning. And on top of that, you're able to learn how to use it more naturally, right? And it has much more direct carryover to your language fluency in the
That's what I'm saying, bro. That's literally what I'm saying. Like, I think we are both in agreement the importance of context and understanding how to acquire words. But I do think that the way you go about that, that's where things start to split off a little bit.
future, and even to your listening comprehension, right? Because that's how you're going to be comprehending words in the future. And so it's really important to have those two elements in place, I+1 and entire sentences. Once you have that structure in place, now your flashcards become comprehensible input, right? And so that's where things get a little bit confusing now, because now that your flashcards are comprehensible input, you require much less time just spent watching content, right? And that's really...
So going back to what I said earlier, technically, if your goal is to learn words like a definition, like you put a singular meaning to a word, then sure, yeah, okay. If you have comprehensible input cards, then you're technically, sure, you're immersing in comprehensible input, as you're saying. I think that's the take here. But my qualm here, once again, is that let's say that, I don't know, your goal is to learn like the 10,000 most common Japanese words. Now you can either go about that by doing the core 10K, right? Because let's just think about this, practically. You're doing the core 10K, and as you do it, you learn more words, and then all those sentences, as you get more and more deeper into the 10K, all those sentences become comprehensible input, right? So why do you even need to immerse in the first place? Why would you ever need to immerse? Maybe people, I think for me, like I want to immerse in Japanese. I want to get good enough so I can watch anime, talk to people, read books, listen to podcasts. The only way to get better at anything in life is by doing that thing. I used to be a swimmer. You know what I did to get faster at swimming? I went to swim practice. I wanted to be a professional Fortnite gamer at some point. That was a failed career. I mean, look at me here, but I played Fortnite for like hours and hours. And here we are, same with Japanese. I find a weak point. For me, it's reading, and I spend hours reading novels, and now I'm better at reading. I can read more advanced things. Now, yeah, there's words I don't know. I probably would be able to pick up on them if I was more of an Anki drone, but it's more enjoyable to actually immerse in the content. And I think that at the end of the day, if your end goal is to be really cracked at Anki and like have a huge mature like card count to like flex on people, sure. But if your goal is to like be able to use the language, speak well, listen, read, write, whatever your goals are, then you need to do those things more. Now, I do think that Jeremiah has some genuinely good takes here, especially when it comes to like comprehension and also context. But beyond that, to kind of say that to acquire a language or to get fluent in a language, that you need to spend most of your time grinding out flashcards, I just think is misleading. I personally don't agree with it. No shade towards Jeremiah, but I just can't see myself kind of envisioning that. Right, Junebug? I just personally can't see myself agreeing with that. If we define fluency, just for the sake of this video, as B2 according to CEFR, right, which is, I'd put it on the screen right now, editor. So we have a few things we got to get good at here. Now, I'm honestly dog shit at writing. It's probably going to stay that way. So let's just talk listening and reading, because those are the two main skills I've been focusing on. And I feel like I've improved so much in the past 2 years. And you know what I've been doing is immersing. If you want to get better at reading, you got to read more. If you want to get better at listening, you got to listen more. If I want to be a better cat owner, I've got to take care of my cats to spend more hours with them to know how they're feeling. And if I want to be better at Japanese, I got to spend more time with the language. Sure, Anki's a way to do that. But I mean, how do most Japanese people learn Japanese, right? It's exposure to the language repeatedly by watching content, listening to content, reading stuff. And you've even said it yourself, is that, things don't always translate one-to-one, right? So I think to rely on just a flashcard-based system to acquire most of your vocabulary and neglect immersion is going to be very detrimental for your Japanese in the long run. It's not going to build a solid language model, and you're just going to probably have a bit of a jankier, idea of how Japanese works.
What I really wanted to talk about, like the time of consuming content to using flashcards. What's that type of ratio going to look like? Now, with that being said, I'm only talking about hours here that you have dedicated specifically to language studies. So like if you're like obviously driving to work, obviously you're going to listen to a podcast. And if you're going to be driving to work, let's just say for you personally, your commute is 1.5 hours to and from work. So 3 hours total every day. Obviously, you might not have 3 hours total to be spending on flashcards. So obviously in that case, your listening to flashcard ratio will be off. I'm not talking.
Well, obviously I'm going to drive while doing my flashcards. Thank you. I'm kidding. No one do that. I mean, that's fair. Yes. Fill in the gaps with immersion, with listening. I have no issues with that. I mean, that makes sense.
About that.
But you're saying you're
what
not
I'm talking about here is the situation.
Okay, I want to hear what he says, but like, so you're telling me that you are actually immersing quite a bit when you can, but you're not accounting that into the ratio? Let's hear.
Where you have 2 hours to sit down and actively study the language. In my opinion, very little of that time should be spent just sitting down and watching content. The majority of that time should be spent grinding flashcards in a way that's optimal for your goals. For example.
Okay, so if you only have so little time in the day to immerse or to study, to actually sit down and consciously study, you should grind out flashcards instead of watching the content in your target language.
Grinding flashcards in a way that's optimal for your goals. For example, if you have 1.5 hours of active study available to you for Japanese, right? And your main goal is to increase your reading comprehension, I would recommend spending at least an hour of that time, of that 1 hour and a half, doing flashcards related to your reading comprehension, whether that be like reading cards, kanji cards, whatever that looks like for you. And then the next half an hour would be just like free flow reading or something like that, right?
My main question is, like, if you give yourself so little time to immerse, you're going to be pressured to choose like harder content that's going to make immersion not fun, because you're like, oh, I'm doing like 20 new cards a day, or like I need to find more new words to do. Because if you're spending so much time in your flashcard app, are you eating cardboard? Oh my. If you're already spending so much time in Anki, then I assume you're going to get through and your backlog's going to be pretty much non-existent. So people are going to be pressured to, if they're like limiting how much time they're immersing, they're going to be pressured to choose harder content with more unknowns, and it's going to make the general experience and interaction with the language way less pleasurable. I don't know about, you guys, but I've started Japanese because I found the language beautiful, and I've quit it multiple times because I've burnt out. And I found that you need to create a good experience where you're interacting with the language in a way where you're like, yeah, this is chill. I enjoy the language. Not everything's a speed run. You don't have to completely optimize your like learning journey. There are definitely better ways to study Japanese than I'm doing right now. But the point is that you keep coming back. You need to build a routine that you're like happy with, and like you can just keep coming back to. And I personally think that 2/3 or more of your study time being Anki over immersion, for probably the majority of people, I don't want to speak for everyone, it's probably not that fun. It's probably not. I would probably give up on the language if that was how things were looking for me. But let's hear the rest of what Jeremiah has to say.
With listening, same thing. Let's just say you're learning Korean and you really want to improve your listening. Then you would spend, if you have 2 hours, let's just say, maybe you would spend 1.5 hours of that active time doing listening flashcards, right? Where you're increasing your vocabulary, you're doing a bunch of reviews, all this stuff. You're really listening to sentences, and you're even repeating after them too, in order to really lock in to make sure that you heard it properly and all that stuff, right? You're really spending 1.5 hours doing listening-based flashcards with no text on the flashcards at all. It's entirely based on your listening ability. You're listening, and then the last half hour is going to be spent just listening to the language. Maybe you just watch a show with no subtitles.
Okay, so my question is like, why not just do that from the get-go with immersion? Why not watch so much Japanese content and do like the occasional amount of SRS to the point where your vocabulary grows enough to where like general Korean like dramas and stuff become comprehensible input for you? Wouldn't that be infinitely better than having to make an environment where all your flashcards are comprehensible? Wouldn't it be better to get your vocab up to a point through a lot of immersion with supplemental time in Anki to make pretty much virtually all Korean content comprehensible to you? Then you'd have so much more to choose from. You could have fun while you're immersing and shadowing and reading and listening or doing whatever. And it's just a genuinely better experience for you. I don't know. I feel like there's like okay, there's the grindy way to just do purely flashcards and get like a somewhat decent-ish understanding of vocabulary, or like maybe the slightly slower way where you're more focused on immersion, but it's more thorough. You're gonna get a deeper understanding of these words, and your language model, your base vocabulary is gonna be much stronger. It's gonna be in a much stronger place. Yeah, excuse me, so that you can have so much more fun while you're immersing and interacting with the language. Isn't that the whole point? I want to have fun. I want to have fun. I spend all these hours at work during the day grinding. You think I've got that kind of energy to keep grinding and being an Anki drone and swiping for hours when I get home? No. If I have just a few hours out of my day to interact with the Japanese language, I'll do 20 minutes of flashcards and just watch whatever. I don't care if I build a backlog. You probably shouldn't, and if you are, maybe look into that. But like, I want to watch stuff. It's more fun. And at this point, it depending on your level, right? Like, I can just watch stuff and chill. I can watch stuff. I can retain my vocabulary. It's fine. I think it depends on your level, not your goals.
Most people, if they have 2 hours that they're dedicating to studying Korean, they will spend half an hour doing audio flashcards and then an hour and a half just watching content. I'm saying the opposite, an hour and a half of the audio flashcards and half an hour watching content. And trust me, your abilities will improve so much faster. I have done this in both Vietnamese and Japanese. And with both of those languages relative to the goals that I was using these flashcards for, I tried both ways. I tried majority input, minority flashcards, and I tried majority flashcards, minority input. And I found that in both languages, I was at different levels too with both languages. With Vietnamese, I'm already fluent. I'm just still learning to get more fluent. And with Japanese, I'm like basically beginner level, maybe low intermediate.
Okay, I mean, I don't want to like make assumptions, right? Because everyone learns things differently. So maybe for him, like the heavy flashcard method worked. It's just for me, I've done the same thing. Back when I was first getting into Japanese in high school and college, it's actually where I had my first big burnout. I did a ton of Anki because I was like, dude, I need to prep myself for immersion. I want to learn so many words that like it's not a problem to watch like Soul Eater, watch like Attack on Titan in Japanese. And when I did that, like I grinded so many cards to the point where I was like, oh, I think I know like enough Japanese. And then I would go and it'd be full of words I knew, which made it frustrating. I would see all these words that I knew in immersion, but I just couldn't quite understand the sentences. And that's because my understanding of each of those words came from very specific context in these Anki flashcards. Whereas if I had just like kind of seen them in that one context, had like a somewhat decent idea of what a word meant, and then went to like NHK Easy or just started doing comprehensible input out in the wild, and then got to see those words in different contexts, that would have been much better. Because every time you see a word in the wild, your mental model either, it'll guess what the word means. And then it's either verified or denied, right? So it's just like if I think a word like, if I see the kanji for taberu, to eat, and I see it in a sentence about eating sushi, and I'm like, oh, that word means to eat. And then I read the rest of the context, and I'm like, oh, yep, that's right. That further reinforces the meaning in my head. Versus, I think it'd also be used to like make a living, technically. And if I see it in that context, and then my brain is like, why is this guy eating money? And then I go look it up, then my mental model slightly shifts of that word, and then I have a better idea of the nuances. And now I have I kind of unlocked another use case for that word. So Are you done? Anyways.
Right? And so with both languages, even though they're completely different, even though my level in those languages is completely different, I found that no matter what, I always progress faster when the majority of my time, my active time with the language is spent doing more flashcards.
Now I'm curious though what that means for progress, like getting more fluent. Is that just you recognizing more stuff in the wild? Is that you feeling like when you're talking to natives, are the words coming to you more easily? Are you able to write better? Do you have better listening comprehension? Or is it kind of all of the above? I'm sort of curious on which aspect. Because I'm not doubting this, obviously. Like I'm not questioning the level of like languages here. I'm just more curious when you say that you're feeling that progress more, is it kind of in all the fields or is it one specifically?
And again, before I end this video, I really want to just clarify, it has to be the right kind of flashcard study. If your main goal is to get better at listening to the language and you're doing cards with words on the front, like reading on the front, right? And it's just one word in isolation, your listening ability will not improve that much. You will get way better listening improvement via just watching shows, right? You will just get way better listening improvement from that. However, again, you have to make the cards intelligently and you have to follow the instructions, right? Like if your main goal is listening improvement and you only have audio on your cards, no words, and you're listening to the entire sentence, you're listening to it sometimes multiple times to make sure you can understand it instantly. You're even like listening and repeating to make sure you can say it too, to make sure you really heard it properly, all this stuff. And you're really like properly doing the listen and repeat, and you have one sentence with only one unknown element in that sentence, and you're doing that for the majority of your time, I'm telling you, you're going to improve so much faster. So yeah,
I don't know about that, Chief. I personally would say that you can, if you want to get better at something, I'm going to reiterate again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. If you want to get better at listening, you have to listen more to real content. You could train your ear in Anki over the same words over and over again, right? There are tools for that. But if you want to get better at listening to like Japanese on the fly, because let's be honest, like it's not every conversation you have with like a person in the wild is going to be the same, right? We've all heard those stories of prepping for like a conversation at the convenience store and then like they go off script and you're like, what the heck is this? Right? So for, to say that, oh, like, if you want to train listening, just keep repeating and doing these flashcards, comprehensible input, I think is a little bit misguided in my opinion, because why do that when you can go watch a random show or even a comprehensible input YouTube video, put it on like 0.5 times speed, shadow it, shadow chorus it, right? Record the audio, record your audio, overlay it, see how close you can get to sounding native. Why can't you just repeat that, bump up the speed slowly until you're at 1 time speed and you're shadowing the native at normal speed, right? And then also with listening, if you're going to make a listening flashcard, by the way, I would highly recommend having the audio on the front, word on the back, of course, target word on the back with definition. But yeah, just shadow, choose your content accordingly so that it is somewhat comprehensible, but out of your comfort zone, and just increase your vocabulary that way. Test yourself, give your brain new patterns to analyze. Don't rep the same cards over and over again. And then the same goes for reading. Honestly, I want my reading to be entertaining, not just repping out the same sentences over and over again like a zombie. Even if I get the occasional new, 3 to 5 comprehensible input cards from what little immersion I'm doing each day, I want to be excited. I want to read horror and mystery novels. I want to read manga. Let me, I want to go out there and immerse. That's kind of the whole point of learning Japanese, so shouldn't I get to go do that? So for me personally, if you're going to want to get better at a skill in whatever language you're studying, go do that thing, but with native content in the form of the way it was supposed to be consumed, not these boring, flat Anki cards. I think you should still do them. They're super useful. I use Anki. I use Migaku. Code JaredDesu at migaku.com/JaredDesu, by the way. 50% off the lifetime plan. But seriously, I think SRS has its place, but it shouldn't be at the forefront of your language acquisition journey. Personally, it's just my thoughts. Before I close out the video, let's hear closing statements from Jeremiah.
If you implement the advice in this video, you could potentially double the speed at which you're making progress right now with your target language. And that's not an exaggeration. So if you found this helpful, consider clicking the top link in the description. That's my program. I'm currently running an insane deal right now where you can basically get lifetime access to the community and the program and the calls with me and everything like that for just one-time purchase. So yeah, if you found my videos helpful and valuable, then that program will be super valuable for you. All right.
The only thing that's going to get you fluent twice as fast is by going to migaku.com/JaredDesu, where you can get 50% off the lifetime plan or an additional month on the... No, but seriously, I think overall, there are a lot of good takes in here. I think Jeremiah, give him credit where he's due. If he is as good as he says in Vietnamese and also beginner and intermediate in Japanese, bro's doing something right. I just think that there are quite a few things that I personally just don't agree with. I do think that for me, I think immersion should be more of the focus when you're trying to learn a language. You want out? Give me 1 second. But yeah, anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. I guess, oh, holy moly, I almost tripped and ate shit. Yeah, Jeremiah, if you're watching this, dude, I would love to just maybe get some time together, do a little interview and see what your thoughts are just on general language acquisition. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, and thank you to all these wonderful channel members. If you'd like to see your name up here, you can do so by joining down below. And we have a wonderful Discord with hundreds of members just like you waiting to connect. So, take it easy, and I will see you guys in the next video. Keep learning, keep immersing, and keep grinding. Peace.